Hey, thanks for listening. Please subscribe to our newsletter at theproductporch.com for notifications on the latest episodes and exclusive content.
We wound up saving $150 million in margin improvements just from this stuff. Right? That's not sexy product work, but super sexy for our CEO, CFO.
Welcome to the Product Porch. I'm Todd Blaquiere. Today, David Nash joins Ryan and me on the porch to cut through product minutia and focus on what actually moves the business. Now settle in, folks, because on the Product Porch, every topic is a product topic. No Joe, no countdown.
I know. What are we going to do, Todd?
You know, we're also missing, this is a morning, and we don't have Joe's great morning talk show host voice. But, hey, welcome, sports fans. You know,
maybe we can conjure Joe up in the course of this discussion.
Yes, I think we should try.
We're going to have to bring him in with Wayne's World references and baseball references. Well, we heard a third voice here on the porch today. It's our good friend, Dave Nash. David Nash, this is his second time joining the porch. David is a multi-time chief product officer. He has an extensive background in B2B SaaS. Ryan and I both have learned a lot from David. He's an American expat living in Portugal, now focusing on investor advising, fractional interim CPO work, and coaching. Welcome, Dave. Good to have you back.
It's great to be back with you guys. And I looked at my calendar, and we did this about a year ago. So I hope you've had ample recovery time since then.
It's been too long, David. It's more
I can't
than
believe
recovery.
It's been that long.
I know.
Well, David, thank you for coming on the porch again. As always, you've brought a fun topic to dig into. And so we'll let you introduce that topic. Really excited to have this conversation.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, I'm trying to see what has not changed in product while everything else seems to be disrupted by generative AI. And I go back and I look at some touchstones of things which have always been valuable, but perhaps have fallen out of fashion. It's probably a good time to refresh. One of the things that I've been talking about lately here is this notion of moving the needle on the business. And I don't mean to just be trite with the labels, but we have a need as product managers to not only be good at all the stuff we've always had to do, right? Delighting our users, winning the hearts and minds of our users, but really moving the needle on the business. And again, when I say the needle, what needle are we talking about? You know, we're familiar with dashboards and speedometers and tachometers and all, but this notion of product outcomes and business outcomes, perhaps we've talked that into the ground over the last couple of years. But when I was in London the last few years, working for a couple of private equity growth phase companies, I got really close with our board of directors in both companies. You know, it was a good refresher for me to really remind myself that we need to not just talk in the language of the business, so to speak, but make sure that the things we do directly result in things that investors and shareholders, care about. So I'll stop there for now. But, the basic idea is there's a couple of needles to move. Let's distinguish them. They're related but separate. And let's really focus on kind of moving the business-related needles.
Yeah, David, I'm interested because as we were preparing for this, you mentioned a way it was. Like what's
yes.
So tell me how you saw it and how you see it looking ahead.
I'm trying to channel Walter Cronkite for the way it was voiceover here. But no one probably even knows who that is, and listening to this podcast. Anyway, it's a great opener. So if you remember in the days of yore, not so long ago, we would be working on our latest product pitch. Maybe we had a product council or a quarterly executive update, or maybe even doing your annual roadmap. And you'd walk in with your desk of way too many PowerPoint slides, and you would have to come up with a business case. We laughed about the business case.
Oh, yeah.
If I add this feature, Todd, how many more of these things am I going to sell? So how many dollars will I add to the top line? Or am I going to help some profit leak somewhere? How many people can I replace? How much friction can I take out of this customer internal thing? We'd write these business cases. We'd feel really good about ourselves. And then we'd stack rank them. and hopefully we'd get the order for some of the things. So I look back at those days fondly because we were well intended but so naive. And so that's thing number one. Thing number two, and I sometimes open my talks with this: raise your hand if you ever went back and actually verified that business case actually happened.
Oh,
You know,
David,
a quarter
you're
or
speaking
6
to my
months
heart.
later, like no one's hand goes up. So that's what we thought being commercially savvy was years ago.
Yeah.
But working for B2B SaaS companies, especially, but not limited to private equity owned growth phase ones, none of that stuff matters. You know, what your investors want to know about today is how much, how frequently, you know, how quickly will I recover every dollar I spend in R&D to be $1 in revenue or $1 in profitability.
Yeah, David, I think it's important.
Yeah, those days are charming, but gone.
Yeah. I love this story. And you mentioned private equity. I want to just double down on the fact that spending most of my life in like B2B corporate America as a product manager, it still applies. Like these 100%. Same patterns still apply.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great way to kick it off, because you mentioned some things that all sound like good things, right? How am I increasing efficiency? How am I, finding profit gaps, like eliminating a profit gap, like all these things that are wonderful things to be able to say that you're going to do with your product. You talked about moving the needle. What is the needle? Let's go there. What is some of the different things? So what are you seeing that, B2B SaaS investors, PE firms and senior leadership, what do they really care about?
Yeah, it's a great question, Todd. But even before we go into that, it may be a good idea to refresh for a moment or two, this notion again of what are we measuring and why it's important. So before we get to the growth phase PE-owned stuff, to Ryan's point, it's exactly the same in large public companies. It's the same thing in startups. So whatever the company structure, whatever the maturity level, it all comes down to the same thing. Here in product land, right, we would do product-y things and say product-y things like, wow, here's what's in the backlog. Our UX is awesome, right? Here's what our platform is, or look what we learned during our last round of product discovery. And every time we say these things and we're really happy with ourselves, your CEO and CFO are probably hearing, I'm conjuring up an image of SpongeBob now, blah, 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 right? They really don't know. They don't want to know, and they don't care. When things are going great, they especially don't care. But when things are not going great, which is much more often, those are not the things they want to double down on and really interrogate and tear apart. They want to understand things that are really related to financial investors and owners' expectations. So product-y things, going back there again, we would talk about typical product outcomes or product indicators, like I made this change in the UX and now users are doing X more often than doing Y. Those are great. We often refer to those as leading indicators, because if you make a change or two in your product, you can see almost immediately, depending on how you've instrumented the product, what effect that change is having. So they happen pretty quickly. There's a fast rate of change. You can make a small change and see a big change almost immediately. Those types of outcomes, they're typically created by the product team or the product leaders. And they answer a very specific set of questions, which are still valuable, of course, which is all around, are users getting value from our product? How do we know? So that's still cool. Again, to Ryan's point, large company, small company, public, private, that's really important. However, going back to the blah, blah, blah SpongeBob response, your CFO and your investors, they could really care less about that. They care about things like, ARR, annual recurring revenue, churn, retention, expansion, EBITDA, operating margin, those kinds of things. And so it's incumbent on us really more than ever to connect the dots. We still have to do all the product-y things I mentioned, but we need to move that set of needles, the business stuff, down the road. And these are lagging indicators, right? Because even the most effective product changes may not ripple through to moving the top line or the bottom line until weeks or maybe even months later. So those business outcomes, they are going to be either written explicitly by your executives or your investors, your board of directors perhaps, and they have to connect to the product stuff, but they're all the only things that those people are really going to care about.
Yeah, and I've heard a few things, and I'm going to play it back to you, and I'm looking for some advice. So if I'm a product manager, I care about things that feel more leading to me, user behaviors, things like that. If I'm headed into a room with executives, they're okay. They see a connection, but they care more about the lagging, the things that impact the business more. I've heard things like EBITDA, ARR, MRR, like those kinds of metrics. So how do I distinguish between the two, and how do I prepare for those conversations when I need to have them?
Well, I think first off, the most effective leaders and PM teams are not doing this once a year, right? They're kind of living and breathing it every couple of months. You're going to be terrible at first, right? You're going to absolutely be terrible. I'm not a CFO. I never, did an MBA in finance. And so you really have to, be a student first and recruit some fellow travelers at work who know the stuff intimately and can help you learn. So that's thing number one.
I love
thing
that.
number two, again, is have a hypothesis. It's easier than Portuguese, by the way. I'm thinking ahead to my Portuguese class in a couple of hours, and my anxiety level is already going up. But but the ARR and MRR, there are some really simple tutorials that are really readily available out there. It's not really hard, but it's really important to understand what does good look like for your company. What does good look like for your peers? I do a whole separate talk, especially over the last year, on SaaS unit economics, and that's too heady and too frothy for today's session. But knowing what good looks like is really important. So if you have an EBITDA margin goal that's a couple of points, right, above where you are now, that's huge, by the way. That's huge for a large company. Even a point or two of EBITDA margin are things that investors and institutional investors love. In a small company, of course, all these numbers have much more, you can move them much faster. And of course, they'll have an even greater effect. But going back to your point, it's understand the baseline, have a hypothesis, and then take it from there. Can I tell you a story?
I'd love to hear a
story. Yeah.
About when I realized this, and this was more than 10 years ago, and I lament that I wish I knew about it even earlier. But roughly 10 years ago, I was wrapping up 10 years at a company called ADP, Dealer Services. Actually, ADP is best known for, I think, paying 1 in every 6 payrolls in the U.S.
Yeah.
Large employer services company. But I was in a different vertical called ADP Dealer Services, and we basically provided all the software for US and UK and Canadian automotive retailers. And so when you went to buy a new car or a used car, or have any kind of service done in that car, or did financing, or anything related to that new or used vehicle, there was a great chance that the auto dealer was using our software. So big enterprise company, it was spun off from big ADP into just this automotive vertical. And like so many companies of that era, it had grown up as an on-prem software business. I mean, this business started like in the late 70s, early 80s doing green screens. That's how old I am. But anyway, so we were trying, like so many companies, to re-platform and move to SaaS, right? All of us at this point have lived through at least one iteration of, we're on-prem and we want to move to the cloud, right? That on-prem software has worked forever, and you have a lot of customers on it. And I'm thinking back to 2015. Here are some stats which blew my mind. We had 150 separate line item products. They had 350 individual software components. And you'll love this, because it was on-prem, we had 1,500 versions of that software deployed.
Oh my gosh.
Not like N or N-1, 1,500 versions. And best part, 99% of it was customized. Right? So your local Ford dealer had the same-ish software as the General Motors dealer, right? Or the BMW dealer, except it was all different. We aspired.
That's a drain on the business. That is a drain on the business.
Oh, yeah.
It is. Now, you could argue that those companies who were our customers, they're happy as a clam. They don't
Sure.
want new software, right? If it ain't broken, don't
Yeah.
fix it,
Yeah,
right?
for
But
sure.
yet, even though we were serving customers, and these products, you could argue, these long tail products were printing money every month. We were bleeding so badly just in the customer support. And by the way, shout out to David Pugh if he ever hears this. One of the guys on our team, it was in our group, went out and helped us identify these long tail products, which by the way had like a handful of customers on each of these versions. And we had to give them the tough love message of, hey, we love you a lot, but you'll be so much happier on our new stuff. So we put together a nice pithy program called Move Up. And we said, we're going to help you move up, Mr. Customer, so that it's all about you, off of that software you love into something you love even more. So that was not because customers asked for it at all, right? This was because the business was bleeding from 10,000 paper cuts.
Yeah.
We wound up saving $150 million in margin improvements just from this stuff.
Wow.
So I'll stop there because you might say there's nothing sexy about that, right? That's not sexy product work. That was turning off the lights on old stuff and trying not to lose too many customers in the product. So not sexy product work, but super sexy for our CEO, CFO, and our investors.
So not sexy, glamorous product work, but meaningful product work like that. Like I have conversations with some product managers sometimes where they want to be on the forefront. Right now, I want to have AI tacked in front of my PM title, AI product manager. And I want to be putting new things into the world. But there is such a place in the world for people to see the big portfolio picture, make the tough decisions, and make the CEO happy, David, right? Not just introduce the new thing and get patted on the back because it has AI in front of it.
You just said make the CEO happy. I'm going to use a product term that we use all the time. Empathy. Like I'd love to spend a minute and empathize with these people that we're really talking about. So the CEO of a large company, your investors, your the PE firm that owns backs your company. Can we talk a little bit about, David? So you're saying like we need to know these metrics. We went through a series of them. We need to be able to move the needle on the business. Why?
Well, okay. Can I just jump in real quick? Because David, you mentioned it. You said we have to know what good looks like. Todd, you mentioned empathy. I want to connect those dots. You got to understand what good looks like by empathizing with the people that you're talking to.
So not every product is a SaaS product.
Sure.
So if you're making water meters or athletic shoes, these economics won't necessarily apply to you. But in the case of SaaS, since it's such a large part of the global economy, those economics look like, we typically talk about things like top quartile. So and by the way, some of this information is tough to get because private equity investors don't typically report on their portfolio companies. Public companies, it's a little bit easier. And so empathizing and the actual outcomes, Ryan, to tie those two together, they are things like, let's say, net revenue retention.
Yeah.
So gross revenue retention, if I could put on my little academic weenie hat for a moment, right? Gross revenue retention basically is as simple as out of 100 customers, how many of those are you retaining, right? So the number can never be higher than 100, right? And if you're like 95-ish gross revenue retention, that's pretty good, right? But when we talk about monetization, right, which is something all investors care about, right? And if you're a privately owned company, your valuation will be represented in your exit value when the company next transacts. If you're a public company, it'll be represented in your share price, right? So going back to GRR and NRR, so GRR can never be greater than 100. But we know that if you are talking about a growing business, you not only need to retain your customers, you need to expand, right? Mm-hmm. So this gave birth to something called net revenue retention, right? Which now says I'm not only going to hang on to Todd and Ryan as my customers, but they're going to buy even more stuff from me. That either means they're going to buy additional products in my portfolio. That they're not going to buy just the Big Mac. They're going to buy the whole the whole meal deal with the shake and the fries as well. Or they're going to buy a better version of their existing product. So we start talking about cross-sell. What else can I sell them? Upsell. How can I sell them a large shake instead of a regular shake? And therefore, we need to monetize them more than what they're paying for us today. So this is expansion. It leads to net revenue retention, which by definition has to be better than 100. So we talk about net retention in the top quartile now of being 125% up to 145%. And if I laid out the Pareto of the top performing B2B SaaS companies, you'd see that it's flat. And then as you get the hyper growth, like in the generative AI companies today, they are monetizing existing customers much greater than just hanging on to them. So there's a quick, maybe a long-winded answer to your short question. GRR, good means like 125% or greater.
Let's empathize with the product manager for a moment. Okay, so the product manager, we're telling the product manager, look, you got to drive the business economics. You got to be aware of the metrics that matter, and you got to be able to tell stories and how to drive them. And here are the non-sexy things, right, that can drive them. And then what is a product manager's day-to-day? They don't have the benefit of sitting in the room with the CFO every day. They're not often sitting in the room with finance on a regular basis, hearing these conversations and having these conversations. Maybe they have a quarterly business report, and that's when they get looped in on the finances of the business. They're dealing with every day a support team coming to them saying, we get calls about this problem all the time. Will you just change the software?
Exactly.
Will you please change this feature so we don't have to get this call anymore? Right? They're customer success managers. They have a core sales walking in the room. We could close this sale if we just had this one feature, right? A lot of these product managers, I feel, are being good stewards of these stakeholders. Their stakeholders are not the CFO. I mean, they are, but they never see the CFO. And their day-to-day stakeholder is the support team, the CSMs, the sales rep, right? And that's their day-to-day. And so they're doing their best to take that, prioritize it. They're thinking about pain. They're thinking about breadth. What breadth of the market does this cover? They're thinking about frequency, and that's how they're doing their prioritization. If when you're in that state, right? So they have all the noise of the world, and we're telling them to listen to that financial signal that might be removed from them. What could you do in that state? How does a product manager cut through that noise to get to that financial signal, the business levers?
Oh, that's a great question, Todd. Well, I guess I can share what I've learned from my journey, particularly by learning things the hard way a couple of times. First off, it's incumbent on us as product leaders, and I don't care what your title is, right? But if you are a people leader of product managers, it's my job, right, to help my team understand. That means the people I hire. That means the people who I do career development for, people who I upskill. Because these skills, which, going back to the top of our conversation, which we ignored for too long, or were seemed as just transactional or sales things. No, they're product things. So first off, it's incumbent on the leader to help spread those priorities to the team. This could be as simple as making sure the entire product team knows what the company's financial goals are.
Yes.
Because every company has them. Right. And they may not be on a website, if you're a privately held company, but, if I'm director or through CPO or anything in between, my job is to let my product team know this is what the company and therefore you and I are going to be measured on by the end of the year. So when the CS person and the salesperson and the partner person comes with their hair on fire, ask them, I hear you, Mr. Customer Success Person. Help me understand how this links to the top 3 things this company cares about. So you're not going to say no, right? Implicitly, you're looking for reasons to say either not now, maybe later, as opposed to a hard no. But share that culture, help foster that culture of everybody knowing how the things they're asking for are going to directly tie to the company's financial goals. And David, that alone would be a huge thing. And if you're a product manager, I say to you, your job now more than ever is to demand that you know these things. And that means if you're not getting this from your product leadership, that's too bad. But
Yes.
don't say, oh, they didn't tell me, therefore I didn't know. Take ownership of your own career, right? And go build partnerships with your finance team and others. And all those other cross-functional areas, which we know from other discussions, are the key to success in product anyway, right?
Yeah.
So building these high fidelity relationships.
Yes. Let's get into some nitty gritty with the PMs. I know Ryan has something to add there. But before we do, I'm at the edge of my seat here, like hair on fire. I love what you've said because, when I was a first-time director of product management and I got to join a big muckety-muck meeting on the 9th floor with all the presidents of the company and got to enjoy this, I left that room and it was kind of even, kind of just implicit that like it was implied that, you keep this is our conversation. We just keep to us. And everything inside me when I left that meeting was that my instincts were, I got to tell my team. Like I just heard what matters. And so I just did. I'm like, no, I got to tell them. So I said right away, I brought them into the room. Come on. Let me tell you what I just learned from this meeting. This is what matters. This does not matter. They don't care about that. They care about that. Like I just wrote it on the board. And I think at the time I felt like I was breaking rules. And for years afterwards, I felt that way, by the way. For years afterwards, I'm like, man, I'm too transparent. But I've learned, no, that is not sharing the goals of the company. It sounds absurd. I don't know why it's opaque at so many companies.
Oh my God, what if the team finds out?
What if they knew what we're trying to do with the business?
I have some theories. That's what I want to talk about.
Okay, let's go.
So I think too many companies make a big declaration of here are the goals. There's too little time spent on how does this team within their scope of control influence or help drive progress towards that goal. And the leader, so Todd, you as a director, I'm going to communicate the goals. I feel like I should do this in secret. But you were connecting dots for them. And it's one thing to share the goal. It's another thing to share the goal and start having meaningful conversation about what will we do, what won't we do? How do you in your seat help us impact that thing? Because people see the goal, it's like, how am I going to do that? Well, there's a weight of an organization behind that. You're a piece. And
for leaders, let me tell you one way I've helped them do this in the past. So if you have any direct reports and you struggle with this, and I don't know exactly how to do this, again, at the LA Times, we went through so many changes at Tribune Publishing. We even changed our name as a company at one point. It was nuts. It was a mess. I'm looking at my team and going, I don't know how they're possibly going to be successful. They don't know who the new boss is tomorrow. So finally what I did is I went and I surmised what mattered at the company by listening. Like we came off the recent QBR. We came off the QBR call. Mm-hmm. And I just wrote down, here's what I heard that matters. And then I thought through on their behalf. And I think this is what you're saying, Ryan.
Yeah.
I thought through on their behalf what that meant for them. I had different roles on my team. They were all different roles. And I just drew a chart. And I said, okay, here is what the business is trying to do, which means here's what our department needs to do, which means in your role, you need to find a way to do this and this or this. This is what you can do in your sphere of control to move this needle that moves that needle. And so I literally drew a chart and gave it to the whole team. Follow your chart on up, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, there's so much there. I would just offer this. I'm with you in spirit, like maybe 99% of what you said. The only wrinkle I would offer is that when you are constructing goals, and whether it's OKRs or some other formality, I would say that the individual product manager's goals should not be really stacked or hierarchical. Really, in a perfect world, they should be no more than one link away from something the business gives a damn about.
Oh, I agree.
Because when we cascade OKRs, and I did this for years until I knew better, the company cares about this, our department cares about that, your team cares about this, and therefore, you care about that. If you're anything more away from one click from something the company cares about, you're doomed, and it's OKR theater, and you won't get it done. And by the way,
I 100% agree with that.
I will call out my good bud Matt LeMay, who just wrote a book codifying this. It's called Impact First Product Teams. And it's just like mandatory reading, Todd, not just for product leaders, but for every product manager. And so goal setting. So what you did was awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. I wish more product leaders did that, of connecting the team to something the company cares about. And again, my only wrinkle is to make sure they are no more than 1 degree of separation. Right.
I love that improvement. There's a few things I did when I did that chart that I wouldn't have done today. It was a lot too action oriented, by the way, as well.
Yeah.
But yes, I love that improvement, because you are right. Oh, we were going to talk about the product manager. Let's talk about that a little bit more. So we said, like, the product manager, it's up to you to know. And so one of the ways you do that, you suggested, David, is you should be asking that of your manager. And I hate to say this, but we all know it's true. You can sometimes ask of a manager who doesn't care to actually answer you, or be asking of a manager who's just ignorant. Mm-hmm. And it's the worst when you realize you're in that situation where you're like, oh, this person does not actually know what we're doing. What are some other tools? What else could we do if I'm a product manager who's like, I do want to move the needle on the business. I really do. I'm not quite sure what we're measuring. What can I do?
I'm like you, Todd. I'd much rather ask for forgiveness than approval, right? So if I'm not getting the insights that I need to be successful at my job, knowing that I don't know some things that are really important, take your finance guy to lunch, buy him or her, a coffee, yeah, right?
I love it.
Go to your head of customer support or customer success. Bring bagels in once a week, do donuts, do a brown bag with the team, and ask them not only what's going on and not only what they want from the roadmap, but what's keeping them up at night and why. These will all factor into your hopefully improved prioritization of what matters, and it will help you in partnership with them understand, how to take joint goals. And I want to double click on that as well. Not individual OKRs as much as aligned OKRs.
Yes.
So what we did as an executive team, by the way, the last couple of companies, is I would take a key result along with the CRO, right? Or the customer success officer, the chief customer success officer, so that the thing we do in our product would provide some benefit or savings which they would have to accrue, right? So if, to your earlier point, if I fix that crappy feature, which is causing, 80% of new customer support tickets, right? Besides me saying I did it, how are they going to accrue that savings? Because now they theoretically freed up a bunch of capacity, right? So are they going to shift those resources who are no longer being consumed by that crappy feature to do something else? Will they reskill their team? Will they create capacity to hire and do something new? So that's how you do awesome joint aligned goals, is making sure when you address the problem that somewhere in the organization, someone accrues a benefit. And if you do that, you will be a hero. And you have to hold them accountable to it, right? Because just like the business cases that we joked at the top of the call, right? If you have an ROI and you did the work, you better make sure that whoever, was the beneficiary calls out the benefit.
Yeah, you just mentioned two fun parts about product management.
Yeah.
I think one of the most fun things about product management is you get to play in all the sandboxes. You get to play with marketing and sales.
Right,
you get to play with it. You get to play with finance. You get to play with everyone. And what's cool is you begin to see things no one else sees. And the reason you do is you're this connective tissue that's talking to this part of the business and that part of the business. And you're seeing, oh, if we move that, then we can move this. And now you're seeing benefits that other people aren't seeing.
100%.
The other part that I think is really fun part of product management is celebration, which I think we as product people suck at.
Oh, yeah.
I think we, if we scorecard the entire field, we get like a D in celebration. We are just so not good at it. But the truth is, care about it, not just because obviously it's gonna be how you're gonna communicate your success, but it's gonna give the entire company and your team, your hardworking team, something to celebrate. So if you're paying attention and following those metrics, you get to turn around and go, team, remember this thing we talked about 6 months ago? It came to fruition. We made it happen. We've achieved the outcome.
Wow, you're good at this. I like that.
Oh.
No, I think that's great. Create heroes, celebrate other people's victories, and shine a light on the sales guy who was able to save that account, or the customer success person who was able to expand the business with that client, or the customer support person, who doesn't have to shovel crap anymore and can now move on to better stuff. 100%. And you're right, we are terrible at it as a community.
Yeah. Gap and gain, right? We like to focus on the gap in product. Not the gain.
So what do you think, guys? This has been a really interesting conversation as I've been hearing. I know I have some things plural I want to take away from this. But David, you said something that really resonated with me. Demand to know your business outcomes. And I think that is so important for people to hear.
No, amen. It's our job. It may not be in your job description, but again, here's where we separate the good product managers from the great product managers, right? And when I say good to great, I mean really three things. First off, if we expect ourselves at every level of product in the organization to lean in to connecting our work to the things that matter most, three things happen. Number one, to make a real impact in the business, more so than the other 80% of product managers everywhere. Number two, you're going to love your work a hell of a lot more. You're going to be so much more fulfilled, right? Because you're going to see the results of what you're doing in a way that everybody celebrates. And number three, last but not least, is you're going to control your destiny a lot more, right? You're not just going to hang on to your job in an environment which is increasingly hemorrhaging product jobs, but you're going to become recognized as among the most valuable contributors to the organization.
Agreed. All right, Ryan, that sounds like David just kicked off our key takeaways.
I think so.
Maybe you can edit them into a different order when you put this thing together later.
That's fantastic. Ryan, do you have a key takeaway from the call?
I mean, I think it's the one I just said. Demand to know your business outcomes. You have a responsibility to yourself and to the organization that you serve to understand those things. And you can't just sit and wait for other people to tell you. You need to do it yourself.
This is my key takeaway. This is a great reminder for me. Is my team fully aware of the business outcomes they're driving? I would hope I would score an A on that, but I'm going to test myself this week because I'm going to ask. I'm going to have some meetings and ask some questions to see. And I'm not going to blame them for not knowing. If they don't know, it's on me.
Yeah.
I got to help them know.
I wish everybody were like you, Todd, because that's our role. No, seriously, as product leaders.
Yeah.
That's the first time anyone said that about me.
Many of us didn't learn this lesson, early enough. And like I said, it really wasn't until more than 10 years ago when I really got that lesson from doing that cleanup job at ADP, which was not glamorous, but really moved the needle on the business.
Well, thank you so much, David, for bringing this topic. This is fantastic. I think we could have talked about it for another hour if we wanted to. This is great. And we get to see you again soon, right? We're going to have another conversation.
Let's not let another year go by.
No, it's going to be sooner than that. I have a feeling.
I can't wait. Give my best to Joe, who is with us in spirit today, and wishing you guys a very happy holiday season, a wonderful new year. And let's hope things look up for product in general and tech companies in general in 2026.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, David.
Thank you so much, David. All right. Bye, guys.
All right. See you, everybody.
Until next time.
Thank you for joining us on the Product Porch. We release new episodes every 2 weeks. You can also find us on LinkedIn for more content. We offer a special thank you to AJ and Jack Blaquiere for the music. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts of this podcast are their own and do not represent nor necessarily reflect those of their employer.